I'm making this video to talk about certain aspects in feminism and two people who are interested in a version of feminism that perhaps is not as mainstream today as it should be. Wanted to sort of give an introduction to more workable or understandable version between radical feminism, which is unfairly tainted a lot of the time, and what's frequently known as mainstream feminism. Mainstream feminism, or what we might call as liberal feminism, woke feminism, third wave feminism, is what you will find in Jezebel, Bustle, even the New York Times, BuzzFeed, and Vice. Okay, these four major publications which you would think are really feminist and really progressive, and Vox as well. It won't be a surprise to many of you that there's an ongoing battle between what's called intersectional feminism. It's not really intersectional, but we'll get to that, and what's called radical feminism. And I want to give people a reason, or rather maybe an argument as to why so-called liberal feminism and intersectional feminism, and I'm saying so-called because that's not what intersectionality is at all, should be utterly dismissed. Okay, so because I don't want to unnecessarily change the name of intersectionality as it was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, I'm going to call this, well, the Vice and Vox version, okay, also known as woke. But again, woke simply refers to people being awakened from whatever their slumber in not being able to recognize how they're being oppressed. In what ways does woke feminism or third wave feminism differ from what's known as radical feminism? Is three main positions. Okay, it differs a lot in principles and assumptions and bases as well, but in daily life you're going to come across three major issues in which woke feminism differs from radical feminism. Now, to be fair, a lot of you might very well have criticisms of radical feminism, which is completely fair. People are allowed and should be able to critically examine any philosophy. But the other version, called and woke feminism, is just, well, yeah. Here's why. Okay, you can disagree with radical feminism all you want, and there are sometimes that, others who agree with some of radical feminism's positions don't necessarily agree with everything as well. Okay, but the lunacy, the sheer, utterly indefensible lunacy of what is called woke feminism is beyond forgiveness. Okay? Now I realize that you, whoever is watching this, has no reason to listen to me. Who am I? You don't know. You have no idea who I am. I'm not Sheila Jeffries or Andrea Dworkin or Gloria Steinem. And we don't have a coherent, unified theory of feminism for people to agree on. We don't have a consensus. We never did. There are some definitions, but they are largely a result of evolution itself over time. So it's completely understandable that if I say, no, you should follow radical feminism or second wave feminism, you're going to wonder, okay, but why? You know what, maybe you're wrong. Maybe these guys are right, and this sounds better or whatever. So, and my purpose in this, at least this hopefully brief video, is not to tell you you're wrong or give you an entire rundown on all the ways in which radical feminism or second wave feminism is the true feminism, right? I understand that it's very hard to make that claim when we've had various schools of thought, and there's been little attempt over the years to harmonize it and to achieve consensus. But even assuming that we don't have the authority to claim to be the one true feminism or the correct version, even starting from that assumption, you can still see that woke feminism is drivel. It's complete and utter, unforgivable drivel. Why? Because they contradict themselves. Every single day, within the same paragraph, they will be inconsistent. The contradictions are so massive, so many arguments and principles and assumptions that clash with each other, that really half the time it's amazing how they manage to hold these thoughts in their head and not simultaneously explode. Okay, let me explain. Woke feminism is typically supportive of pornography. If anyone knows my other positions on this through other videos or articles you may have seen, you will know that I'm very much against it. But okay, you don't need to agree with me. Why would you? Why should you? Right? It's just sex on screen, as people say. So why should woke feminism be against it? What's wrong with that position, you might ask? Here's what's wrong. Woke feminists and general left-leaning social justice activist type idiots normally talk a lot about representation. Woke feminists are fans of what's called the Bechdel test, which talks about female representation in mainstream media, and it actually does a complex calculation of how many lines are spoken by women and how many of those are speaking parts and whether they are just ancillary characters. So when it comes to mainstream media, including songs, plays, books, movies, games, they are able to make an analysis of how many lines are being spoken and whether it's a speaking part or a supporting role, and they're able to say, oh, well, this is still sexist or reproducing traditional characteristics because, it doesn't represent women. And at the same time, these morons support an industry which has titles like ass ripped apart by huge cocks, slut gets gangbanged, dumb whore gets face fucked. Okay, and again, as you can imagine, these titles are accompanied by equally graphic videos. So let me get this straight. You're protesting against speaking parts and lines in mainstream movies, books, cartoons, games, and songs, and you find this okay? Seriously, how does that work? Like, how stupid, how incredibly, embarrassingly, and disgustingly stupid do the woke feminists have to be to say that because potentially, hypothetically, this is not verifiable, the people consented, this representation of women is okay. Dumb teen slut cries while receiving painful anal. And this is okay? How do you hold those two thoughts in your head? So either you have no clue of what you're doing, okay, and you're just going along with whatever is new, in which case, again, you are a teenage dumbass who goes along with whatever is a fad and should not ever be taken seriously, or you're just afraid of taking up anything on a principle basis. It is so self-contradictory. It's so self-contradictory. Okay, you cannot possibly argue against the representation of women in mainstream culture on the one hand and be okay with this. Who does that? Who has to be stupid enough and in denial enough to do that? That's insane. It is insane. how can anyone else, and why should anyone else follow these morons? The vice morons, the Vox, the blithering lunatics that are writing in BuzzFeed and Vice and Vox. It's impossible. It has to be illegal to be this stupid. Okay? This is one of their popular positions. And when you argue against it, you're told, oh, you're not sex positive, you're a swerve. We'll get to that stupidity later. So, you have to be incredibly stupid. Okay, almost unbelievably stupid to not see the contradiction here. Why is anyone following this school of thought? Or leave alone this school of thought, why is anyone listening to anything these morons have to say? Like Amanda Marcotte in Slate, and literally any writer most writers in Slate, Salon, Vice, Vox, BuzzFeed, there's another ridiculous Everyday Feminism. Let's not forget Everyday Feminism. They started out as moderately sensible, but apparently now their branding is just going after race rather than sex-based discrimination, and in the process contradicting themselves in every second paragraph. Then so that's their first and honestly the worst contradiction. The second one is on trans rights, or rather trans entitlements. This school of feminism, or rather this faction, is very fond of the sloganeering, like saying trans women are women, and essentially saying that since gender is a social construct, all documents and everything can just be changed because you claim it, and that sex doesn't matter because intersex people exist. Anyway, on the one hand, these idiots will write reams and reams and reams of paper and articles and podcasts on how language is important because language gives you a way to express yourself and a way to identify yourself and blah blah blah, and how inclusive language is so important. Okay, they have produced millions of minutes of media on the importance of changing language to accommodate trans experiences, trans reality, and trans identities, and how it matters so much to their mental health and to their well-being, as well as to their status. One popular podcaster on Big Think actually said, well, of course language matters. How would you feel if you weren't able to describe yourself accurately and if people just use the wrong words to describe you? So this group makes a name for itself in saying language is important, and you have to modify language to accommodate trans identities, the existence of trans people, and don't see the contradiction with destroying language that describes women's experiences. I can't, okay? So you're simultaneously saying you have to have proper words, accurate words, perhaps more qualifiers, prefixes to describe trans people's experiences. You have to change the way language is constructed. You have to add some disclaimers to ensure that trans people are included. I agree with that. But they simultaneously do not see anything wrong with completely misrepresenting the meaning of words like women, girls, female. They do not see the contradiction with saying every time you talk about your experience as a woman and a girl, you're supposed to refer to yourself as a chest feeder or a person with, or a uterine, befitted person. Leave alone the principled objections to this approach and why women hate it. They hold these two thoughts at the same time in their heads. So one group needs language to describe their reality, but if you do it to the other group, this is totally okay. and they don't need language to describe their lives or experiences or reality. Reducing all the words that they've ever used to describe this is perfectly fine, because one other group now wants some more language to describe their reality, because really making up new words is that difficult. It takes a special amount of stupidity and malice to contradict yourself this many times. You can't hold to such positions. You simply cannot. Okay? Just because one group is a majority or you think it's more privileged doesn't mean the same requirements, at least the same basic requirements, don't apply. If you think one group, however much you like them, need language to describe their lives, the other group does as well. This is not difficult. How stupid do you have to be to actually think this makes sense? And why are any of you taking morons who hold or write these things seriously? You don't need to agree with me. You can agree with them. Okay, you don't need to agree with radical feminism. You don't need to find radical feminism the right version or sympathize with the cause. Anyone who is incapable of being consistent with their own principles in a very narrow topic, why are they being taken seriously? How can you? How can anybody? The stupidity is beyond mind-blowing. The amount of mental gymnastics that they do to go through it is mind-blowing. And these are the thought leaders of feminism today? Any writer who publishes in Vice, Vox, BuzzFeed, Jezebel, Bustle, seriously, ask yourself how many times they contradict themselves in their own articles. It's both exhausting and hilarious. And finally, there's their position on sex work. And in this case, I'm not talking about the video media version. I'm talking about actual just prostitution, as in without extricating pornography from it. This group is woke feminism is very critical of capitalism, and it should be. Capitalism has its issues, and they talk loudly about capitalization's unfairness and about rape culture and about male sexual entitlement, and they go on and on about how capitalism reduces everything in our lives to how much we can produce and how much of capitalist value we can provide. And their grand argument is, let's therefore commodify a bodily function itself and put a price tag on it. Sure. I mean, the advantage with the right-wingers is that they don't deny their own assumptions. They're perfectly okay with putting a price tag on anything. Okay, whether it be a human body, a human experience, love, I don't know, whatever. Okay, these idiots claim and constantly scream about being against capitalism, against the commodification and the monetization of everything in our existence, against the demand that all of us must constantly produce value in a capitalist sense, which they have no way of defining, and at the same time support the commodification and monetization of a sheer bodily function. How? How do you manage to be so inconsistent and so inconsiderate and so mind-blowingly contradictory? It's impossible. It's unbelievable. These people are beyond stupidity. Like I said, you don't need to agree with me on any of these positions. Okay, you can hold the position that, no, that's fine, let's just commodify human bodies and let's commodify sexual activity. That's totally fine if they want to consent. Whatever, we'll get to that. Or rather, that discussion is separate. But this bunch, they call themselves intersectional feminists, okay? And they think that these are three major positions on intersectional feminism. I'd like to deal with this in detail, but that's not intersectional feminism at all, or that's not what was envisioned by it, at least. And yet they hold positions that are not only clearly harmful to women and girls, they contradict themselves in every line. These people are beyond idiocy. They're not worth anybody's time. Okay? If you want to follow feminism or criticize it, or just have a position, follow a school of thought that at least makes some sense internally and doesn't just make a fool out of you and of themselves. They are embarrassingly stupid. Most of these people shouldn't. Somebody should really give them an IQ test, because this is not possible. It's more contradictory than any other oppressive school of thought. Okay, oppression is fairly logical, even if it is immoral. They are bending over backwards to accommodate directly conflicting positions, and they don't even have the decency and the grace to realize it or acknowledge it. Woke feminism needs to be dumped. And people might ask, okay, well, if you think of yourself as a feminist, why are you spending so much time attacking them? And instead, shouldn't we all just be fighting patriarchy? I get this a lot. A lot of us get this a lot. I'll tell you why. Because woke feminism, in its internal contradiction, is so poisonous. It's so ridiculous that it reduces us all to laughing stocks. Every oppression against women in the past has not been successfully implemented simply because of the power men held over us. It was capable of being enforced for so long because of the active and passive participation of women. Dowry, honor killings, all of these are not possible without the women participating, okay? And they have women who participate in patriarchy or just these horrible things. They are kind of worse because they provide the first line of defense. They provide the whitewashing, the sanitizing. And when others say, okay, well, this is wrong, the counter is always, well, some women, or, well, this bunch is okay with it. This bunch claims they're feminist and they say it's okay. Women who claim to be feminists or just being women participate and help in objectionable acts towards other women are perhaps more dangerous than the men because they are the first line of defense. They provide the first justification, the armor, and they make it a million times more difficult to solve anything. Today, that version is woke feminism. Okay, because they stand in the way of solving anything. Because they're so internally contradictory. They're so stupid, and they're so driven by infighting, with inconsistency, and with fixating on stupid issues that they take down all of women's activism with them. This is not a school of thought or a set of positions that should be taken seriously. Not just because they harm women, but because they can't even decide for themselves what they are. That's how collapsible and structurally weak this school of thought is.